From the nonpartisan Maddy Institute and the California channel at the state capitol, this is a Maddy Policy Brief. Welcome back. We're talking with Carol D'Alia, the Executive Director of the Little Hoover Commission, about a report they recently issued on occupational licensing in California. Now, you mentioned earlier that occupational licensing can adversely affect certain groups more than others. What groups?
There were several in particular. There are former offenders, there are veterans, there are military spouses, and then those folks trained in places outside of California, particularly those trained in foreign countries.
Yeah, so let's talk about each one of those. You had some specific recommendations when it comes to active military and veterans and their families. It's military spouses as well. What's the occupational licensing problem there?
So I'll take them separately.
Okay.
If you're a veteran, you are potentially in a battle zone. Perhaps you are treating patients. You
could be a medic.
You are a medical tech. Mm-hmm. You have experience. You come back and now you're exiting the military and you want to continue. Well, it's really hard to translate that skill into becoming a registered nurse. And although there are some bright spots on the horizon where we're doing some good things on that, before I move on to that, the military spouses have the challenge of when a military family is relocated from one location to another, from one state to another, their license may not be accepted in the new location. So,
and there's a lot of moving around.
Yes.
Yeah. So they call it, military typically moving from station to station, and so if there's not reciprocity, there's a problem there.
Right. And if you're only there for a year or two, it's not worth the hassle and the expense of getting relicensed in each state that you move to.
And that has reverberations, I would assume, because the military spouse brings home income, and if they can't continue on in that occupation in a new state, let's say in California, that impacts whether or not the veteran or the military person wants to stay in the military, correct?
Yeah, we in fact heard from the Department of Defense who said that was a national security issue because most of those who are married, it is a huge consideration whether or not their spouse can be employed. It's
also interesting too, we're talking about the medics in the military. We've already paid for their training, right? In the military. Then are you saying then we have to pay for that training yet a second time?
Yes.
So they can get their licensing?
Yes, so we're paying twice essentially. And a veteran who's now, they've served their time, they're coming out, and we're essentially saying, oh, well, that skill doesn't qualify. And it seemed wrong on a lot of different levels.
But you have mentioned that states, including California, are moving to try to change those specific problems when it comes to
in fact,
military.
I give the legislature credit. They've enacted a flurry of laws, one in particular that relates to the medical technicians that now requires, if you have a nursing program in California, that you develop a way for medical technicians to become a registered nurse. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be allowed to have a nursing program. So that was one law that really had some teeth.
That's a big hammer.
Yeah.
Let's talk about foreign workers. Why is it important to break down the barriers for foreign workers?
So we're talking here about highly skilled professionals who are trained in other countries and come to California, perhaps they were a dentist or a doctor, and now have difficulty being able to practice the profession they were in. So here we have somebody who's a highly trained professional, competent in a different country, and yet they get here and they're unfortunately taking a lower paying job. We lose out because they're making less money, but we also lose out because in certain circumstances where we have workforce shortages, particularly in healthcare, here are people trained and culturally competent, fluid in different languages that could be a boon to the California workforce.
It's interesting. I had a neighbor who was from Latin America, a doctor, and had a real problem getting certified, in the United or licensed in the United States because of all the barriers that are involved. The last one I want to talk about was ex-cons. Trying to get them to rehabilitate, re-enter society if they, finally straightened up their act. What are some of the recommendations you have for ex-cons to be able to get their licensing to get into some of these occupations, become contributing members of society?
Absolutely. So what we found as the barrier was, in a lot of ways, it's not clear. So somebody maybe had a conviction a long time ago, barely even remember what it was that they were charged with or convicted of. Maybe they pled out. They go to, they take coursework, they spend money and time, they're trying to get their life together, they pay their licensing fee, and they get denied. And they had no idea up front that what they had done in the past was
these
a
are
barrier.
not hardened criminals. These are people that may have done something stupid when they were young, and now it's haunting them going forward.
And sometimes it's difficult to tell whether what their crime that they were convicted of is any relation to the current occupation that they're going to be doing. So it's finding a way to better sort that out. Our recommendation was really a easy one. Let's make it easily available to folks. So put it on the website. So if you're thinking about becoming a licensed professional in some particular area, you can go and see, okay, I have this in my past, I'm never going to be able to do this. Or, oh, there's some gray area. And the gray area we found to be acceptable, because you may want to rule out somebody who has done something that would be significantly difficult for that person to be trusted in an occupation, versus somebody who may have been charged with something, but the underlying cause was less harmful. And so we felt like we needed to keep some gray area, but that it needed to be more upfront. We also felt like there are certain boards that require the applicant to list their offenses. And in so doing, one of our witnesses said they fall into this candor trap, where they put down what they think they've done, and then it doesn't match with the background check, because it's been so long.
And it's automatic reject.
Yes.
For a more in-depth analysis of this and other public policy issues important to Californians, please log on to our website at maddyinstitute.org and click on the Policy Analysis tab.